Hello friends, I am Dr. Asmat Fatima and welcome to my YouTube channel Easy Dental by Dr. Asmat. So today video is about casting procedure in dentistry. So let us start our video. Now you need to know what is a casting. So basically it is a process by which you are forming a new object. How? By the solidification of a fluid which is injected into a mold. That means you are injecting a fluid into a mold, and that mold, after solidification, it will form a new object, and the object which is formed by this process is known as casting. So in this figure you can see that it is a well defined, finished and polished casting like this here. So there are several steps in the casting procedure. So your first step is tooth preparation, then you have to take the impression of the prepared tooth. Third step is die preparation. Fourth is wax pattern fabrication. Fifth is preparation of the pattern for investment, which includes steps like screwing the pattern, attaching it to the crucible former and placing it in a casting ring with a ring liner. Step 6 is investing the pattern. Step 7 is burnout. Step 8 is casting procedure. And step 9 is recovery of the casting, finishing and polishing. So after you have taken your impression of the prepared tooth, and then next step is you have to make a cast and prepare a die out of it. So this you have prepared your die, then you have to prepare your wax pattern on the die. Then the next step is you have to attach it to the sprue, and this thing you can see is your sprue. This is your sprue base. Okay, now what you have to do is you have to put your casting along with your sprue into a casting ring along with the ring liner, and then you have to fill it with an investment material. This process is known as investing. Now the next step is burnout. So in burnout, all your wax will be eliminated and whatever is left is a hollow structure, and the next step is casting. In that hollow structure, all your metal by which from which you want to achieve a casting, it is injected into that mold space and your casting is formed. Then the next step is you have to remove the investment and casting is devested. That means the investment material is removed from the casting. Next step is you have to cut the sprue. Cut your sprue from this position, and what is left is your casting, and then you have to do the recovery of the casting. Then you have to do the finishing and polishing and then deliver it to your patient. So your first step is the tooth preparation. In this figure you can see it is the tooth preparation of a mandibular molar. So here this is a very nice tooth preparation. Finish lines are very clear. Okay, so what you have to do is similarly you have to do the tooth preparation on which you want to achieve a casting. So the next step is after you have prepared the tooth, you have to take the impression of the prepared tooth. So these areas, these are the impression of your prepared tooth, and the impression is taken using an elastomeric impression material. Third step is you have to prepare a die. So what is a die? Die is a positive reproduction of the form of the prepared tooth in any suitable substance in which your inlays, crowns and other restorations are made. So here, this area, this is the cut section of, and this is the whole thing is known as cast, and the cut portion on which you want to achieve restoration is your die. Okay, silver plating or coating in the surface with die hardener, all these was to increase the abrasion resistance of a die. Now the next step is, in all the cases you have to apply a die spacer, and what it will do, it will provide space for your luting cement, and this relief which is provided by the die spacer, it also helps to improve the seating of your casting. So die spacer application is very important step in the casting procedure. Next thing is your wax pattern fabrication. Now there are two methods by which you can prepare your wax pattern. One is the direct method, another one is the indirect method. So direct method में क्या होता है that your pattern is prepared directly on the tooth which is present in the mouth of the patient. Okay, that is directly you are fabricating your wax pattern on the tooth. And in indirect method, you are first taking the impression, you are making the cast, you are making a die, and then you are making a pattern on the die. So it is an indirect method. So this figure will tell you this is a direct method. Directly the wax is fabricated inside the mouth of the patient, and in indirect method it is fabricated on the die. So the indirect method of wax pattern fabrication, the wax which is used is type 1 wax, which is a medium wax. Okay, and in indirect wax pattern fabrication, the wax which is used is type 2 inlay wax, which is also known as soft wax. Okay, so in patients type 1, in on the die, if you're making it, then you have to use type 2 wax, which is a soft wax. And this indirect method of wax pattern fabrication is more commonly used technique. Next step is sprueing. That means you have to deal with sprue and sprue former. Now what is a sprue? It is a part of casting which acts as a channel for the molten metal to flow into the mold cavity after the wax has been eliminated. Okay, when your wax is eliminated, this sprue will act as a channel so that your molten metal can flow into the mold cavity. So the process of attaching a sprue former to the wax pattern is known as sprueing. So here you can see this is your sprue. It will act as a channel or a medium through which your molten metal will flow inside the mold cavity. Now there are several requirements of a sprue. First thing is the sprue must allow the molten wax to escape from the mold. Okay, then second thing is sprue must enable the molten metal to flow into the mold with as little turbulence as possible. And the third thing is metal should remain molten slightly longer than the alloy that has filled the mold. This sprue, it will act as a channel. So all these are the basic requirements of a sprue. Now there are several functions of sprue former. First is to form a mount for the wax pattern. Here this is your wax pattern, this is your sprue, so it is acting as a mount for your wax pattern. Second is to create a channel for the elimination of wax during burnout. Okay, from this area only it will create a channel from which your wax will be eliminated during the burnout procedure, and it will also form a channel by which your molten metal will enter during the casting procedure. So this channel, this sprue, it will act as a channel for both the thing, for wax elimination also during burnout and for entry of the molten metal also during casting procedure. And it will provide a reservoir of molten metal which compensates for alloy shrinkage during solidification. So these are all the functions of sprue former. Okay, if it will also act as your reservoir of molten metal, and if during solidification if there is an alloy shrinkage, so it will act as a reservoir and it will provide you with the extra metal. Now there are several types of sprues. It could be of wax, it could be of hollow metal, or it could be plastic. Wax is for larger restorations, like if you're doing your RPD frameworks. Hollow metal is for smaller restorations like crowns, and plastic sprue is also for smaller restorations. Now types of sprue is also there based on metallic or non-metallic sprues. So metallic sprues include stainless steel, steel or brass. Non-metallic is wax, resins and plastics. Then there are several shapes of the sprue also. One is solid, one is hollow, round or triangular. And sprue can be self-fabricated or it is available as prefabricated. Now there are several variables of sprue former design, so you have to keep in mind whenever you are making a sprue, then you have to notice about the sprue former diameter, sprue former position, its length, its attachment, its direction, and about the reservoir. So diameter of the sprue former, you should learn this, that it should be always equal to the thickest portion of the wax pattern. And this diameter, it will also ensure a reservoir during solidification. Okay, so in this figure you can see wherever is the thickest portion in the wax pattern, the diameter of the sprue should be equal to that. Okay. Now, prefabricated sprue formers, they are available in different gauges, and gauge 10, that means 2.5 mm diameter sprue, is usually for molars and for metal ceramic restorations, and 12 gauge, that is 2 mm, is for premolars and partial coverage restorations. Then there are large diameter sprue. The advantage is it will improve the flow of the molten metal into the mold, and less diameter sprue will cause localized shrinkage porosity. Okay, so always use the correct diameter of sprue when you are making your casting. Next thing is sprue former position. So the sprue should always be attached to the point of the greatest bulk in the wax pattern. Okay, in this figure you can see this is wrong. Why? Because the point of greatest bulk is here. Here is the greatest bulk, so your sprue should be positioned at the greatest bulk in the wax pattern. Okay, see, this one is right, this one is right, because the bulk is here. And there are several preferred sites of the placement of sprue, which can be on the occlusal surface or proximal surface or just below a non-functional cusp. Next is the sprue former length. So the length of the sprue former will depend on the length of the casting ring. Why? Because you have because the top of the wax pattern from the open end of the ring should be 6 mm in gypsum bonded investment. If you're using gypsum bonded investments, then you have to leave the 6 mm gap, okay, from the open side of the ring, and the distance between the open end of the ring and the wax pattern should be at least 6 mm, okay, in cases of gypsum bonded investment. And if you are using phosphate bonded investment, then this distance should be equal to 3 to 4 mm. Okay, so that means your length of the sprue will be determined by the length of your casting ring. Okay, इतना होना चाहिए, दैट मीन्स कि स्प्रू की लेंथ आपकी इतनी होनी चाहिए कि the distance from the open end of your ring till your wax pattern should be 6 mm. Okay, next is the sprue former direction. Always the sprue should be directed away from any thin areas of the pattern. कभी भी thin areas पे नहीं होना चाहिए. It should always be where there is the greatest bulk in the wax pattern. ठीक है. Then the sprue former should not be attached to the right angle, okay, because there will be impedance to the flow of the molten metal. ठीक है, वहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा turbulence होगी. It should always be sprued at an angle of 45 degrees to the proximal area. So in this figure you can see it is at an angle of 45 degree. So if this angle is 45 degree, then the flow of the molten metal will be very easy. And if it is at a 90 degree angle, then there will be turbulence and impedance to flow. Then there are two types of attachment of the sprue former. So first is the direct attachment. Directly it is attached to the casting, and this one is indirect. That means there is a reservoir bar through which all the castings are connected. Every casting is connected to this thing, and then this bar is connected to this area, crucible former area. Next thing is your reservoir. So what is a reservoir? We have to make a small amount of additional wax which is added to the sprue former near the junction of the wax pattern. This round thing you can see, this is your reservoir. You have to add additional amount of wax near the sprue former, okay, and what it will do, it will provide as a reservoir of molten metal, and it will prevent the localized shrinkage porosity. And this reservoir should be at a distance of 1 to 2 mm from the wax pattern. Here also this bar, this is your reservoir bar. Next is your casting rings and ring liners. So here in this figure, what you are seeing is your casting ring. This is your casting ring, and this under wala thing which you are seeing is your ring liner. Okay, this is your wax pattern. This is your sprue area, this is your crucible former area. Okay, so these ring liners, they could be of different materials. So it could be of asbestos, it could be of cellulose, it could be of ceramic, or a combination of ceramic and cellulose ring liner. Okay, so what is the function of ring liner? this ring liner, it will allow uniform setting expansion of the investment, okay, and it also acts as a thermal insulator. And another thing is it makes your casting easier to remove, okay. So ring liner is always attached inside the casting ring, okay. And thickness of liner should be less than 1 millimeters, and the amount of expansion, it depends on the number of liners you have used, okay. So if you have used 2 liners, then there will be more expansion rather than when you're using your single liner, okay. Next step is your investing. After you have put your casting on, that means your wax pattern, your sprue, everything inside the casting ring, and you have attached a ring liner. Next step is what you have to do is you have to do the investing. The first step before investing is you have to apply wetting agent on the wax pattern, okay. Wax pattern ko you have to cover it with your wetting agent so that there is no formation of air bubbles, okay. Then you have to seat the casting ring into the crucible former. This is your crucible former. You have to seat your casting ring into the crucible former. Then you have to mix the investment and vibrate. You have to take equal amount of water powder ratio, okay. You have to mix it well. There should be no bubbles. Then you have, mixing can be done by 2 ways. It could be either manual or it could be vacuum mixing, okay. So whatever the approach you are using, you have to mix your investment and then you have to vibrate it so that there is no air bubble, and then you have to seat your casting ring onto the crucible former, and then you have to fill it with the investment material, okay. Then you have to leave it for 1 hour so that the investment material sets on its own, okay. Then the next step is burnout or wax elimination. So the purpose of burnout is to eliminate all the wax from the mold and to expand the mold, because why we are achieving this expansion, because during solidification there is some amount of shrinkage. When the metal will solidify, there is some amount of shrinkage. So if the mold will expand, it will compensate for that alloy shrinkage, okay. So after investment, what you have to do is you have to keep that ring along with the invested material inside the burnout furnace, okay. This figure here you can see, this is a burnout furnace, and you have to keep your invested ring and your wax pattern with the ring inside the burnout furnace. Then there is a 2-stage burnout and expansion technique. What you have to do, ring is placed in the burnout furnace and this furnace is heated to 400 degrees Celsius in 20 minutes. Then it is maintained at 400 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. Then after that, in the next 30 minutes, the temperature is raised to 700 degrees Celsius and it is further maintained at this particular temperature for 30 minutes. So in this process, all the wax which is present inside the casting ring, it will melt, it will burn out, and that space will be clear so that your molten metal can go inside that space and form your casting. It will take the shape of the mold. So you have to remember that for gypsum bonded investments, the burnout temperature should be 700 degrees Celsius for achieving thermal expansion and 500 degrees Celsius for hygroscopic expansion technique. And if you're using the phosphate bonded investments, then the burnout temperature is 700 to 1030 degrees Celsius. Now after the burnout, the next step is casting. Now there are different variety of casting machines. Whatever you have it in your department, you can use that. So based on the method of casting, it is of centrifugal force type or air pressure type. This is your centrifugal force type machine, this black one, and this blue one is your air pressure type machine. Then based on heating system employed, it can be torch melted, induction melted or arc melted. So this white one, it is an induction melted casting machine, okay. So what happens in casting is, first of all, you have to, these are your metal alloys, okay. ये आपका alloy है, you have to keep that alloy and you have to melt it. using a suitable heat source. Whatever the type of machine is there, suppose if it is a torch melted machine, then the heat source will be a torch. Okay, so a particular heat source, what it will do, it will melt the alloy. Okay, you have to place your alloy into this crucible area. Okay, and a particular heat source will be applied which will melt the alloy. And then hot here in this cradle area, you have to keep your hot casting ring, the ring which was there in the burnout furnace. Okay, you have to keep that ring from the burnout furnace, and you have to keep it inside the casting machine. Okay, then this one, this the arm, this arm is released and it will rotate, and due to the rotation it will create a centrifugal force. So by this force, that liquid metal, it will be forced inside the mold cavity. That means inside your casting ring, जो space आपकी खाली हुई थी after the burnout of your wax, that space is hollow. Now this liquid metal, it will be injected with a particular amount of centrifugal force within the mold cavity. Okay, so this is how a casting takes place. Then your ring is allowed to cool for 10 minutes. Okay, until the glow of the metal disappears. When your metal is hot na, when it is ready to be injected, it will look like your mercury. You have seen your mercury, liquid mercury, it glows. So it will have that glow. Okay, after 10 minutes, when it will cool down, the glow will disappear. Okay, see in this figure, your ring is placed inside the cradle area, and here is your molten metal. This molten metal is heated using a heat source. Okay, ये molten metal, it will acquire a shape of a liquid mercury and it will glow. And when this arm will rotate, it will produce a centrifugal force, and because of this force, this liquid metal will be injected inside this casting ring जो mold cavity थी वहाँ पे. Okay, here this one is the heat source which is melting the gold here. Okay, so now the one step which is left is, after your ring is cooled for 10 minutes, what you have to do, if you are using your gold restorations, okay, if you're making a gold casting, then you have to do one step which is known as quenching. So quenching is, you have to place the heated your casting ring inside water for few minutes. Okay, so that your metal will be, the investment area, it will break. Okay, but if you're using your base metal alloys, then this quenching step is eliminated. You don't have to do quenching in base metal alloys. Only if you're making a gold casting, then you have to do quenching. Then after that, next step is sandblasting and recovery. What you have to do is, you have to you have to de-invest your casting ring. Okay, divestment is done. That means all your investment material, it is removed. Okay, it is hit hard and it is removed. And then you have to do sandblasting. So what is a sandblasting? It is a procedure in which your aluminium oxide is like injected with a stream of pressure. Okay, so what this aluminium oxide, it will do, it will clean the casting. All the investment material, whatever is left on the casting, it will remove that. Okay, so your sandblasting is done. You have now only your casting. उसमें से investment material भी remove हो गया. Now you're left with just this part, this casting part. Next step is pickling. You have to use 50% hydrochloric acid, and you have to dip your casting into that 50% heated hydrochloric acid. Remember, this hydrochloric acid, it is not boiled, it is simply heated, and you have to place your casting. Gold casting is placed. This pickling is also done for gold casting. So this gold casting, it is placed in hydrochloric acid, and if it is your phosphate bonded investment, that means if you're using a base metal casting, then you have to use it in, put it in a hydrofluoric acid, HF, and HCl is for gold casting. So what it will do, it will remove all the surface oxides from the casting. Next step and the last step is finishing and polishing. Then you have to section off your sprue from the casting using a cutting disc. Then your casting is trimmed, shaped and smooth with the suitable burrs and stones. Now gold casting ki polishing is done with carbide burrs, green stones, pink stone, tripoli or roach. And polishing of base metal alloy is done with aluminium oxide and tin oxide. So after the polishing, you will get a finished and polished casting so that it is easier to deliver it to the patient. So all these are the steps how the casting procedure takes place in dentistry. Got it? That's all for today's video. Bye bye. Thank you.